Okay, okay. I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay. I have not seen. All right, shit. Wait, I'm not even on the thing. You can't say. Okay. I saw this on the way home. This was posted 41 minutes ago. It is fucking. It is 7:56 currently. I got this was posted. I saw this on the way home, and I'm really excited because maybe Arms and maybe Warriors getting some actual buffs, right? Maybe we're getting some actual buffs, man. I'm gonna go through this anyway. But the main reason I'm excited, like I'm actually like genuinely excited about this stuff, is it's not very often in this information age of gaming that we have that I'm actually allowed to see something and form my own opinion of it before I see other people chime in and talk about it. I've avoided the Warrior Discord. I've avoided my guild's Discord. I've avoided all that shit. Because I want to see this. I want to see my class get buffed, and I want to be excited. So we're gonna go. We're gonna go through this. We're gonna look at this. I mean, I just got home. I am still in my fucking Domino's uniform, right? I'm excited for this. Because it's not often I get to eat the information myself without zero input from anyone. So I'm very, very, very excited for this. So let's get into it, right? Let's get into it. Okay, before we even get into it, I'm really hoping that Fury gets some general throughput buffs. I think Fury's burst windows are pretty good right now. But because of the tier set, our general throughput is kind of low. So I'm hoping for maybe like a Rampage buff or something like that. Maybe they buff the Recklessness talent. That has a 20% chance to give you 4 seconds of Recklessness to 25% instead of 20 maybe, something like that. We'll see. Arms really needs some serious buffs. I just started progging Fyrakk, and if Arms got some really good buffs, it might even be really worth bringing for Fyrakk, and I'm really excited about that. So I'm hoping Arms get some serious buffs here too. But other than that, I have no expectation of what this is supposed to be. I really hope what this is bringing other classes up to the level of like rogues and mages and Demolock, Affliction. Like, apparently Affliction's still trash. I don't know, but I'm hoping this brings the other classes up, especially the two-handed strength classes, because we're bad even with a legendary, right? Okay. Enough stalling. Enough stalling. Okay. Death Knight. Bone Shield now grants armor based on 80% of strength, was 70. That's actually a pretty sizable buff. I think some of these buffs, you know what this could be? Some of these buffs and changes could be in relation to combating how necessary augmentation is for some of these specs. Like some specs, like this armor buff, that's actually big. That's actually a lot for Blood DK. That's actually really good. Because one of the things that augmentation obviously provides is blistering scales, which is a massive increase in armor for free. So maybe small buffs like that can go alongside making that class not as crazy. 4% full for Frost, 4% full for Unholy. Nothing crazy for those specs. I don't really know how well they're performing. They're obviously not performing too great because I don't even think we're playing our DK in some of the bosses that we've been progging. Like we killed Tendril, now we're on Fyrakk. Feral is already pretty good, but Rip, Rake, Primal Wrath, Feral Frenzy, Lunar... That's actually pretty sizable buffs. Mana buffs to Resto. Okay, that's nice. One of the Resto Shaman or Resto Druids in my guild, her name is Teapot. She actually went and got the trinket that reduces the mana cost of spells from Ulduar Time Walking, which is really good for her. So mana buffs on top of that maybe makes it so she doesn't have to run that trinket and still feel comfortable. So that's a pretty big hopeful. Hunter, I'm surprised to see no marksman changes here. I haven't really seen anybody playing marksman. So I'm surprised. I don't even know how well that spec is doing. So I couldn't even say. But survival, some buffs. All right, cool. Most people are just playing BM. It's really easy. It's really strong. It's uncapped. All right. Holy Paladin. Shield of the Righteous damage and concentration damage bonuses. Holy Paladin needed some healing buffs. Not this? I don't know. This is something that Ellesmere will tell you if it's good or not. I mean, buffs are buffs, but like HPAL's throughput just isn't as good as it was. But what the fuck are these ret buffs? Wake of Ashes, Truce Wake, Seething Flames, Blade of Justice, and Final Jesus! They actually just shotgunned Ret. And Ret was performing pretty poorly comparatively to other specs, even with the legendary. So those are crazy damage. That's a huge AoE. If we look at Ret's talent calculator, what is... I think that's these talents down here. Truce Wake causes targets to burn, so buff the burn by 28%, buff Wake's base damage by 20%, Seething Flames, which in AoE you take both of these. So I mean, that's actually a huge buff to this. Blade of Justice already did AoE. It was a good spender or a good builder. Final Verdict, I don't... Which one is Final Verdict exactly? Divine Hammer, Searing Light. I don't know exactly what Final Verdict. What was that? Final Verdict, deal 10% increased damage, the range. Huh. I don't know which one Pally runs. I think is Final Verdict just the like single target spender? I don't know enough about. I think that's just like the single target spender. But if that gets buffed, that's huge damage buffs to Ret. That's pretty crazy. Actually, my GM will be really happy about that. Priest Holy. Holy Word Sanctified healing buff, holy healing buff, so their spot healing is better, chastise damage, so their throughput's a little better. They just buffed all of Holy Shadow. Shadow got a pretty sizable buff. They're buffing side. Dude, it's so weird how like Shadow, like Fire Mage and Shadow Priest both got like turbo nuked because of what they were doing with the God comp. Somehow Augmentation got away with still being a real class, even though Augmentation was the problem in the first place. And now they're like, oh, we kind of just ruined Shadow Priest. So they're buffing that back to what it should be. And now Shadow Priest isn't nearly as bad. But it is wild what they did to HPAL and Shadow Priest. And they did not give HPAL compensatory healer buffs yet. I mean, the HPAL in my guild's doing decent on Thyrak, but I mean, they're also really, really good. So I don't know how much that's them being good versus Holy being bad. But okay, Shadow Priest buffs. All right. Resto just threw 20% more damage on most of their normal damage and all healing by 5%. So pretty sizable buffs there. I saw Warrior. I saw Arms. Okay. Okay. I saw Arms. I saw the word cleave, which doesn't fix our single target. But I saw Arms. Okay. Arms has been performing so poorly that almost nobody plays it but like Deswind. Because Deswind just likes Arms. I guess TMY has also been playing it on Firac and testing it out, but if these buffs are good, like if these are legitimately good enough buffs, I might play Arms on Firac. So let's scroll down a little and see what we get. Ooh. Oh. Huh. This is weird. Like, really weird. Okay. Cleave damage increased by 10%. Okay. I mean, it's just better, more AoE. Okay. Dreadnought damage increased by 30%. But here's the thing about Dreadnought, right? Here's the thing about Dreadnought. Um, this talent here, all of the things that buff Overpower, buff Dreadnought. So this is buffing its AoE even more. It's buffing its single target even more. You use this button an insane amount. Like, Strength of Arms buffs Overpower. Improved Overpower buffs it. Overpower does buff your other abilities. Overpower deals more damage. So, like, this buff to Dreadnought actually is a lot bigger than it looks, because that's actually a sizable amount of damage. I guess they're focusing more on their AoE, but Arms probably could have used, like, a Mortal Strike damage buff. Not like this. Like, here, let's... You know what's a good way to look at it? We'll go into Warcraft logs, and we'll look at Volcross. Pure single target, right? We'll take one without PI. So, Overpower already does a lot of damage. They're buffing Dreadnought by 30%, so it's going to do... So that's about... At least in this pure single target log, that's what? Like another 1% damage? So that's like... In just single target, maybe a 1% buff. They don't use Cleave. Deep Wounds. Deep Wounds is only doing 3.6 in this log, so 15% buff on there, so maybe... yeah. Not really a full percent. So, I mean, it's really weird how they didn't buff Arms as single target at all. Like, bonus damage for the triggered Thunderclap increased to 200%. Like, they're just buffing Arms as AoE, which is really weird. Like, this is really weird. Like, they're specifically buffing Arms as AoE. Like, all of these are just AoE buffs. When Arms is already can't compete single target with Fury. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know. I expected something more for Arms. I mean, Arms probably had less. Are these like buffs for Mythic Plus or something? Like, Arms was not seen nearly as much as Fury in Mythic Plus, but that's because its damage mitigation's not nearly as good. Arms was already doing better in AoE situations than Fury in like pure AoE. So why buff its pure AoE and not its single target damage? It's so weird. Like, once again, we'll just look at it, right? 236. So with two PIs, 245k with two PIs, right? And then we'll just, or sorry, go. And then instead we'll just look at Fury. Which, with zero PIs, is doing 260, which is 15k more pure single target than Arms. And it got zero single target buffs. Like, Dreadnought's kind of a single target buff, but not really. These aren't good enough for Arms. Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually very disappointed. Very, very, very disappointed in these warrior changes. Buff to prot warrior, ignore pain, just more health and survivability, but this is not nearly good enough. How like even so like we'll look at Volcross, right? Let's look at Ret Paladin. Let's see if they're that far behind. 261. The top Ret log is with 0 PIs. 16k ahead of the top arms log, and already before these buffs, 1000 DPS ahead of Warrior, Fury Warrior. And Ret's buffs look like this, which a lot of these buffs are like that's some single target. You know, we can even look at it, right? Final Verdict is 24% of their damage. So that means with this buff, with just this 10% buff, they're gaining 2.4% single target with just this. Blade of Justice is 10%, which Blade of Justice is being buffed by, so they're gaining another 2% single target from Blade of Justice. I don't know if it's buffing just, you know, let's be generous, right? Let's say it's buffing just Blade, right? Just Blade. That's still 1. That's still 1.2%. So 2.4, 1.2, 3.6%. And let's look at Wake of Ashes, which they're running Truth's Wake, and so they're running both of the Wake of Ashes talent. So this would buff. This would be another. I mean, like that means Ret single target got 6 to 7% buff, maybe a little more. But Arms gets only AoE buffs. And if they're buffing Ret single target, they're not changing anything about Fury's throughput or single target. Because who cares about PvP? Like, this is massively disappointing. Like, massively, massively disappointing. It's now putting our class further behind than every other class in the game for Mythic Plus that receive buffs specifically that will buff their Mythic Plus, like Ret. Ret provides significantly more utility than we do. They're buffing Feral, which is already a pretty good spec in Raid. Huh. I refreshed it just in case they added more, but no. Honestly, extremely disappointing. Extremely, extremely disappointing. Man, I was excited. I was excited. I was happy. I was looking forward to it. I thought, man, yeah, we're gonna. No, just a Warrior needs a new dev or something, man. Like what? Like, how do you have all of this information months at a time, right? Like, you know what? Maybe I'm. You know, let's not be nitpicky. Let's go back to 10.2, right? So still about the same. People just gained a little more gear. What about Warrior? Maybe there's some big crazy Warrior logs that I'm not looking at. You know what I mean? Nope, this one's even higher. And Arms is a single Korean log. Weird. Hmm. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words, man. I'm at a loss for words. Um, how do you look at Rhett, and then you look at Shadow, and then you look at Feral, and even DK, who's not even doing that great, is getting percent buffs, and then now it's just only AoE for arms? Immensely disappointing. Yeah, not much else to say. I'm gonna record this little bit and then tack it on after, because I already kind of talked about the last nooning stuff. I thought a little bit more about the changes, and if I have to consider something like, let's say, if I had to consider that every single one of these thunderclaps were from the tier set, right? If I had to consider that, that means that this would technically be with this change, right? Increased to 200 was 100. If every single one of these thunderclaps was buffed by 100%, that's a pretty decent single target buff, actually. Um, I don't think all of them were, obviously. So like at max you could say almost a 7% increase single target, but But the buff is a little better than what I initially thought of, right? Because all I did is I looked at this and I saw AoE, 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 right? That's all I saw. Dreadnought does provide a decent amount of single target. Deep Wounds is still throughput single target, and the Thunderclap buff still, even though it's not, is still single target, right? If we look at this guy's buffs, we can see how many times he got sudden death. I think we should be able to see sudden death procs. Does sudden death show up as a cast, maybe? Let's go to the previous one. Go to this one. And then we look at... I don't know where I can look specifically for procs, but is sudden... Yeah, sudden death here. So 26 sudden deaths. And then he used Thunderclap 29 times. So that's still sizable, right? That's still a sizable increase. Because 3 of these casts were not buffed, right? And they can crit, so I don't know. The increase is still is better than what I thought it was. Just on first looking at it. But based on what the guy that does a lot of the theory crafting and stuff I did look at the Warrior Discord after. His name is Archimetros. He says here, Arms is saved somewhere around the 3.5 to 4.5 buff in single target, maybe more in more multi-target. Cleave buff might help promote the playstyle, but we're not sure. Should put Arms Bis Sim slightly over Fury, though performance on individual fights may vary. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll set up Arms, and then I will try and play Arms on Fyrakk prog. But we'll see. We'll see. I am not 100% on it, but it could certainly be way better than I thought. But yeah, I will tack this towards the end of the video and just at the tail end of it. But yeah, sorry that I probably didn't need to take 4 minutes to say that, but yep, there we go.